With everything, context matters. Issues and decisions can be presented in different ways to make an issue appear one way or the other. For example, many food products put labels like 20% less sugar to make their products seem healthier. People are more likely to purchase these products because they're perceived to have some greater benefit. What the labels won't tell you is the high sugar content that's also included in the product. In the example that follows, we'll take a look at two different news sources. Each has received the same article about a satellite confirming NASA temperature data and the warming of the Earth. However, each news show will present it differently and frame it based on their own viewpoints. Hello everyone, and thanks for tuning in to Rocks and Friends. I'm Daryl.
And I'm Carol.
Let's go over the stories of the day. Many companies are sending money to help rebuild Notre Dame after the devastating fire last week. In other news, NASA scientists have claimed that they have found new evidence regarding the warming of the Earth.
We can expect President Trump to respond soon, right?
Oh, I don't know about that, Carol.
Well, he has been very vocal in the past about global warming and the hoax of climate change.
We'll just have to keep refreshing our news feeds.
Well, I just did, and in fact, I saw an article that explains how even animals can help with climate change. It isn't that big of a concern as some scientists lead you to believe.
How do animals help climate change?
Well, they can recycle as well, use less water, turn off their cell phones, turn off their electricity during the day, those such things.
Well, you heard it here first, America. That's all the time we have for now. Join us tomorrow for the next Rocks and Friends, and keep up with us on social media to find out the latest news.
Good morning, America. Welcome back to the top of the news on MSNBC. I'm your host, Carla. Let's jump right into the headlines. On our minds this morning is climate change. One of NASA's satellites confirms their temperature data. The planet is warming and fast. In related news, Sir David Attenborough has spoken out about climate change in his new show on the BBC. In the show, he meets up with many scientists to get the most updated information on climate change. Now we go to our climate change correspondent, Carlos, who's on location in Washington, D.C.
Thanks, Carla. I'm currently in Washington, D.C., standing in front of the Capitol. We're waiting on President Trump to make a statement about the satellite's findings. But given his lack of concern on climate change, I highly doubt we'll ever hear from him.
Can you tell us more about NASA's newest evidence on temperature data?
Oh, of course, Carla. According to NASA satellites, the last 5 years have been the hottest yet. The Earth is actually warming faster than originally predicted, starting with the Arctic. Based on these predictions, we need to do our best to reverse climate change before it becomes irreversible. Some of the things we can do are recycle more, turn off the water and brush our teeth, bike to work, or use public transit instead of driving, and more.
Thank you, Carlos. We'll be right back. This is Top of the News. In the previous example, Rocks News framed climate change as less serious and didn't emphasize the impact humans had on climate change. Rather, they put the focus on animals, trying to make them work twice as hard for something they didn't create. On the other hand, the newscasters at MSNBC emphasized the imminent dangers of climate change. They also placed the blame on people and indicated how they might be able to fix the damage they had caused.
For any news story, contextual clues can place the story in a different light. In the next example, we'll take a look at two more news sources. Each news show will present their opinions on a fake story about graffiti differently and frame it based on their own viewpoints.
Welcome back to Rocks News, Austin. I'm Carol.
And I'm Daryl.
The city of Austin is under attack by vandals who have been marking up the streets with their gang symbols and icons.
Yes, they have. The mayor has declared the war on graffiti in Austin. We have our graffiti expert, Dave Inchy, on the ground at the most recent attack on Guadalupe Street. Thanks, guys. Well, I'm currently standing in front of the latest attack in Austin. The graffiti seems to resemble some sort of mouth that clearly symbolizes the gang's thirst for blood. It's their mark that screams, "We're here to hurt people," and it strikes fears into the hearts of innocent bystanders who have witnessed this shocking mural. The vandals want you to think that it's just art, and that's how they lure their victims. These cold-blooded criminals walk the streets with cans of spray paint, which penetrates the lungs with the toxic fumes that it produces. I advise you that if you see one of these criminals, not to approach them and immediately call 911, as they are extremely dangerous and should be avoided at all costs.
Thank you, Dave Inchy, for your bravery. Keep tuned in to Rocks News Austin for the latest updates on these dangerous attacks. Have a good night. Good afternoon, everyone. This is BNN and I'm Rachel Thomas. Today we have a special news story from all the way down south in Austin, Texas. In the capital of Texas, there's a war on graffiti. In the dead of night, local artists and aspiring painters work tirelessly to make the city beautiful by showcasing their freedom of expression on local infrastructure. Not everyone believes in the sanctity of artistic expression, but as local activists have declared war on these innocent souls, let's go to our local correspondent, Ross Mitchell, who's on the ground in front of the latest mural.
Hi Rachel, as you can see behind me, someone has repainted this formerly gray wall with a splash of color. I'm not sure what style of art this is, but the local university should probably offer them a scholarship.
It looks amazing, a true show of talent. How do the locals feel about it?
Many citizens do not have a problem with this new mural, as it adds character to this particularly bland parking lot. And we're still waiting for lawmakers to respond. But from what I've heard so far, nothing will change. This stunning example of artistic expression shall remain a permanent fixture of the city of Austin. Back to you, Rachel.
Thank you, Ross. We're looking forward to hearing more regarding this issue in the future. We'll be back with more after this. In the previous example, Rocks News Austin presented the graffiti stories as violent acts defacing city property. They warned of the dangers of vandalism. On the other hand, BNN sympathized with the artists making these murals, and it felt as an example of freedom and expression. If these had been actual newscasts and news stories, audiences would have felt very differently depending on which network they tuned into. Both of these examples showed the dangers of framing and the need for our audience to be aware of the prevalence of each bit of news we receive.